Day 2 of the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial. Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, she is one of Combs' many accusers, testifying as a central witness.
Is she ready?
Very ready. I'm confident. Thank you.
A kingmaker, a music mogul, and the ultimate hip-hop success story. But yesterday, when Cassie Ventura spoke in court, that meticulously constructed image fell apart in front of our eyes. Diddy's face went white as his ex-girlfriend described events so upsetting that when Cassie disclosed everything about what supposedly transpired behind closed doors, if the most seasoned courtroom reporters were rendered speechless. The man who previously ruled an empire was unable to control his emotions.
So she had on a brown dress, form-fitting, visibly pregnant, head held high, and did not make any eye contact with the defendant, with Sean Combs. He said that Sean Combs directed everything from what she had on to the lighting in the room to how she was supposed to interact with the person that she was having sex with. And again, just to reiterate what is a freak-off, the freak-off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was 22, 21, she was young, she didn't know any better, and that she wanted to please Sean Combs.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend. Combs has pleaded not guilty. His attorneys argue the video is evidence of jealousy, not sex trafficking. And now for this first time, jurors are hearing what Cassie has to say about that and other aspects of their 10-year...
Diddy Combs walked through the music industry for decades, as if he owned it, because he practically did. He turned artists into superstars, built Bad Boy Records out of nothing, and developed a brand that went beyond music into fashion, vodka, and media. On paper, Diddy was the epitome of success. Showing everyone how to transform hip-hop into Cassie's testimony begins, and Diddy's initial reactions, which brought in a lot of money for the company. But that's perfect if you believe what's happening. In court right now, Cassie Ventura's carefully constructed persona as a business genius, mentor, and music visionary was concealing something much darker. While fans applauded his performances and magazines featured him on covers for his business moves, everyone saw his polished red carpet smile. According to reports, Cassie Ventura was living a completely different reality yesterday, and the contrast was startling to everyone in that courtroom. The accusations paint a picture of a man who is completely different behind closed doors. Someone who fans who only knew his public face, and court reporters noticed how Diddy arrived for day 2 looking exactly like the billionaire mogul we all recognize, surrounded by his team in flawlessly groomed custom suits. This man presents himself as the ultimate professional in public, always saying the right thing in interviews. Numerous witnesses detailed how Diddy's entire demeanor changed within the first half hour of Cassie's testimony. The swagger vanished. The confidence evaporated, and the composed business face began to show cracks as the man appeared to be heading to a business meeting without facing serious allegations from his ex-girlfriend. The expensive lawyers were nodding confidently to people in the courtroom, even smiling occasionally. Diddy's legal team repeatedly objected, almost desperately, as she described specific instances from their relationship. Can you believe that? The man who created a billion-dollar empire, managed the careers of numerous artists, and negotiated enormous business deals, was suddenly unable to control reactions in a courtroom. Witnesses described how Diddy couldn't sit still as Cassie spoke, demonstrating the power dynamic that had completely flipped when Cassie actually took the stand. And everyone in the courtroom couldn't take their eyes off Diddy. His face was said to have been colorless, as if someone had pulled a plug. And he began fidgeting with his tie, cufflinks, and then just his hands. At one point, court observers saw him writing notes frantically and passing them to his lawyers. The notes came so quickly that one of his lawyers had to raise a hand to slow him down in one courtroom. As Cassie calmly described their relationship, a third witness said he saw Diddy close his eyes multiple times, as if he couldn't bear to look at Cassie or hear what she was saying. The reporter described it as witnessing someone realize they've lost control of the narrative for the first time in their life. However, was only the beginning, as Cassie's testimony continued through the afternoon. The specific accusation she was going to make would rock the music industry and possibly ruin the legacy Diddy had built over the years. The man who always controlled the story was about to face a version he couldn't edit or produce. The courtroom would soon learn exactly why Diddy couldn't keep his cool.
Looked forward to the freak-offs. Why did Cassie express looking forward to these said freak-offs?
When the prosecution asked her, was there ever a time that you enjoyed the freak-offs? This is when Cassie got choked up and she said, I did, but only because I got to spend one-on-one time with Combs, and I really did love him.
And that is speaking to the psychological abuse, in addition to the physical abuse that she potentially experienced.
Yet, she's definitely laying out someone who was young, who was influenced by wanting to have this record career. She signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment, led by Sean Combs, and basically describes being enamored by Sean Combs, loving him, not knowing about certain things sexually, and him sort of telling her, teaching her about that. And what you hear is someone that was young and she even said, I was young, I was naive, I didn't know any better. But she's really telling the story of someone who thought she was going to be with someone in this music industry that was going to help her career, that cared about her, but quickly learned after the freak-offs that wasn't the case. And what I thought was also interesting is she said that after that first freak-off, she said she felt dirty. She didn't want to do it. And when she brought up the idea of having a conversation about the freak-offs in an email, which the jurors saw, she said she backpedaled in the email because Combs responded by saying, I know, you don't want to do it. And she said, oh no, well, it's not that. But that was the beginning. That was in 2010, where she brings up in an email that she wanted to have a conversation about this. And in her words, she didn't want to do it, but she felt like she had to do it.
Well, Diane, prosecutors have wasted no time getting right into the alleged abuse that Cassie Ventura says she endured for years. Ventura telling jurors, quote, he would bash my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head when I was down. She also got into the nature of those so-called freak-offs, saying that they involved hiring an escort and they performed under the direction of Combs, saying that they happened so frequently it eventually became a job for her to set them up. Ventura said she did not feel she had much of a choice but to participate, that she feared that Combs would retaliate or potentially blackmail her if she did not. And she's had at times to take, she's taken deep breaths, pausing her testimony, Combs appearing to be listening pretty passively with his hands in his lap at the defense table there.
Remaining silent and keeping these stories to herself. Cassie Ventura finally had her day to speak, and she did. She started off small, which is what made it so effective. When she took the stand, you could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. Everyone knew this moment was coming, but nobody, not even Diddy's legal team, was really prepared for what she was about to say. Cassie's testimony developed gradually. It's like a horror film where you know something terrible is about to happen, but can't turn away. First came the minor control issues, such as how he allegedly demanded to know her. He was already a major player in the music industry, a millionaire many times over, with connections everywhere. She was a young model, hoping for a music career. The most shocking part of the court transcripts is when Cassie describes how Diddy allegedly installed tracking software on her phone, and that he would occasionally call her minutes. She also claims that he threatened to shove her music if she didn't comply with his demands, and that he sabotaged collaborations with other artists if he felt threatened. She claimed that after she got to a place where he knew exactly where she was, he gradually cut her off from friends who might have given her the idea to leave him. One by one, her support system allegedly vanished until Diddy was all she had. The judge reportedly had to call for an order 3 times during this portion of the testimony because Diddy was unable to control himself and was making faces that the jury could see. Cassie took out her phone and gave it to her lawyer, and they projected emails and texts onto a screen so that the entire court could see Diddy's expression of complete shock. It was evident that every time the judge warned him, he would take 5 minutes to gather himself before beginning again. It was like watching someone who has never been warned suddenly realize they have no control over the situation. He allegedly apologized for violent outbursts, threatened her career if she told anyone what happened, and made statements that directly contradicted what his PR team had been saying for years. However, those messages were only the warm-up as Cassie continued her testimony, describing physical assaults that allegedly occurred throughout their relationship. She had no idea she had kept these messages for all these years. Relationship. The courtroom fell silent as she recounted being flung against walls during arguments. She also related an instance in which she said he shoved her down a set of stairs at a Miami rental home. Most unsettling of all, she testified about several went limp. Several jurors clearly responded to these claims, one older than the others. The most experienced reporters in that courtroom acknowledged they were unprepared for the level of detail in Cass's testimony. And a woman on the jury was observed wiping away tears, while a male juror was unable to keep eye contact with Diddy, following some of the more graphic descriptions. All of this was just before the hotel incident that would completely blow this case open.
Cassie's relationship with Diddy. Some of those details we've seen in prior lawsuits, but to hear her on the stand actually giving those details, reliving those moments herself. Also, you have to remember, she's very pregnant right now. So I'm gonna be curious to see how long she makes it on the stand, how she's emotionally able to weather all of these questions. And what's gonna be interesting to watch is, you know, the defense from the very start in their opening statement said that she chose to be there. So I'm going to be curious to see how she responds to questions about, was this her choice, or did she feel like she had to do all of these things?
I think what made Cassie emotional is having to describe the details of the freak-off and why she did it. When she talked about wanting to do it to please Sean Combs, that's when she broke down. Up until that point, she had just been answering the questions. She's a little soft-spoken at times, but that's when she got emotional. When she had to answer the question about if she enjoyed it, that's when she broke down, because she said, I enjoyed being with Sean Combs. And she says, I did it because it made him happy.
What did the expressions of the jurors look like?
The jurors are laser focused on what Cassie has to say. And that's to be expected, right? Because she is the person who will likely be on the stand, according to attorneys, for 2, maybe 3 days. She's the one that was in a relationship with Sean Combs for over 10 years. So she's got a lot to say, and she's just getting started.
Just how important is Cassie's testimony to the prosecution?
I think it really connects the dots, Rachel. When you look at that initial indictment and what's being alleged, she really is the person that has probably the most information about this idea that the prosecution says, which is creating a criminal enterprise for Sean Combs' sexual desires. Something else that the jurors saw today that sort of connects it back to this alleged criminal enterprise are 7 photos of people that were very close to Sean Combs, one even his former chief of staff. And these were all people that Cassie Ventura was able to name and explain the functions in terms of what they did: security, driver, chief of staff, someone that handled financials. So it's showing that she knew some of these people, again, because she was with him, around him for so long.
As the courtroom leaned forward to hear her every word, Cassie said, I thought I was going to die that night. She was recounting an incident at the Four Seasons Hotel As this portion of the testimony came to a conclusion, everyone in the courtroom turned to look at Diddy. His response would become the moment that characterized the entire trial and maybe the remainder of his career. He left the room for more. Then 48 hours, took her phone and threatened to punish her if she attempted to contact anyone for assistance.
Defense is going to say is that this wasn't blackmail, this was not coercion, this was consensual. We know that Cassie started out with Sean Combs as an early person, with someone who is trying to get her career started, and he was going to help her. That's what the defense is going to say, that she was starting out and wanted someone to support her. They did their first record deal together. That's something I think the defense is going to focus on, and had it not been for Sean Combs, she wouldn't be where she is right
right now. The prosecution obviously is saying he was in control. It may have started out as a consensual, it may have started out with her being excited about seeing him, but ultimately he took control of that relationship. He took control of her career. This is their key witness, and she's on that stand trying to explain all of the charges that the prosecution wants to hit home with that jury.
No, there was a moment early on when Cassie mentioned Dallas Austin, who she called a friend who's a producer. So I don't know if that's someone that we're going to hear from. We know that there were pictures shown to prospective jurors that are well-known celebrities, you know, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Lauren London. We don't know, though, how they fit yet into why they were even asked, do you know these people? Are you familiar with them?
So the prosecution is questioning Cassie right now, still questioning her.
Defense hasn't even got a chance to, I mean, that might change based on the timing, but, you know, because she's such a key witness, it's likely that she will be on that stand the rest of the day. We learned that Cassie referred to him as Pop Pop, and Sean Combs would refer to her as CC. The prosecution said, what does CC stand for? She said Cassie Combs.
What kind of witness is Cassie coming off as to jurors?
I think naturally when you look at her visually, people see that she's pregnant and looking like she's due any day now. So they might, you know, have empathy, sympathy for her in that way, but we don't really know. We know that they've been instructed to be fair and impartial. As to what type of witness she's coming off as, she's describing someone that she was. Someone she said that was trying to figure out who she was at that time and who she was allowed to be. Now you're looking at somebody that's almost 40 years old, totally different person, but even in describing what was going on at her at that time, taking drugs, trying to please Sean Combs, she's really just sort of laying out the case for her not having a lot of control. So I think that's the takeaway. This is someone who is making it very clear that at that particular time in her life, she said she did not have any control really over what she wore, what she did, who she was having sex with. She's a different person now. But I think when she talks about those details and even reflecting on them for herself, as we saw today,
You must realize that this is a man who spent decades perfecting his public image as a smooth-talking businessman, calm and collected mogul, and man who never lets you see him sweat. But as Cassie's testimony reached its most damaging points, that meticulously maintained mask completely broke down in front of everyone. It was the moment that no one in that courtroom will ever forget. As the afternoon went on, with each new accusation Cassie made, Diddy appeared to physically shrink. In his chair, his legal team was working overtime, and I heard from someone sitting directly behind them that Diddy's main attorney kept placing his hand on Diddy's arm in an attempt to calm him down. Reporters who have covered hundreds of celebrity cases said they had never seen anything like it. Diddy literally changed before their eyes from the self-assured industry titan who walked in that morning to a man who looked cornered and desperate. According to reports, lawyers handed him a memo that read, "Stay calm," in all capital letters, but it wasn't working. When Cassie recounted an incident at his Hampton home, Diddy became so irate that he slammed his hand down on the table. The sound reverberated throughout the courtroom, prompting the judge to halt proceedings and issue a warning. "Mr. Combs, if you can't control yourself, I will have you removed from this courtroom." It briefly appeared as though he might be tossed. Witnesses observed Diddy repeatedly shaking his head and mouthing the words, "That's not true," during Cassie's evidence during trial. The power shift in that room was amazing. For the duration of their relationship, Diddy allegedly controlled every aspect of Cassie's life. But now she described something particularly damaging. It was as if he forgot a jury was watching every reaction. One courtroom observer said it looked like a man who had never been called out before, suddenly realizing he couldn't control the narrative. The real turning point came when Cassie began discussing threats. She testified that Diddy had allegedly threatened her family if she ever spoke about what happened between them. Then came the bombshell that no one saw coming. She had actual audio recordings of his voice making these threats, which her lawyer played for the court. Diddy was unable to stop her, cut her microphone, have security remove her, or spin it through. His PR team, he had to just sit there and take it. You know, that's not how it happened. He yelled at Cassie as he leaped out of his chair, As he attempted to speak over the courtroom recording, his legal team physically grabbed him and tried to pull him back into his seat. 3 of his attorneys had to do it before the judge called for a recess, but the damage had already been done because everyone, the jury, the reporters, and the court officials saw it. The man who had built his reputation on being untouchable had just demonstrated how touchable he truly was. When they led Diddy out for recess, he appeared entirely different from the person who had entered that morning. The mask was removed, and what was underneath wasn't pretty. Just when everyone thought they had heard it all, the real bombshell came. Cassie had evidence that no one had anticipated, including the judge, the jury, and Diddy. For years, she had been secretly gathering evidence of what she claimed had happened during their relationship, including text messages, emails, and photos that were all kept in various locations that Diddy couldn't locate or remove. Utter silence when Cassie revealed that she had received text messages from other celebrities who had personally observed Diddy's actions. According to court transcripts, these were not just any industry insiders. Rather, they were some of Diddy's closest friends and business associates who had been in his inner circle for years, and who had seen things at private parties and backstage at events that the public was unaware of. One person in the gallery said that Diddy appeared physically ill when Cassie mentioned these celebrity witnesses. After reviewing the messages in private, the judge rejected all objections, calling them highly relevant to the case and allowing them to be entered into evidence. That decision alone caused Diddy to put his head in his one by one. The legal team immediately jumped up, objecting loudly and demanding a sidebar with the judge. They argued that these messages shouldn't be allowed as evidence because they were hearsay and weren't properly submitted during discovery. The most damaging messages came from a longtime producer who had worked with Diddy for decades. He texted Cassie after witnessing an incident at a studio and said, "I can't be around this anymore." Another major rapper texted Cassie after a Grammy after party saying, "You okay? What I saw tonight wasn't right. You can stay at my place if you need to." Another female pop star wrote, "I've known him for 15 years, and I've never seen him act like that with anyone else. This isn't normal. Please call me when you're safe. Give me a call for assistance." These messages completely contradicted what Diddy had been saying publicly that no one had ever witnessed. Inappropriate behavior, and that these were private matters being twisted by Cassie. Now the court could see that people had witnessed incidents, had been concerned, had reached out to help her. Then came Diddy's own messages. Screenshots showed texts where he appeared to acknowledge incidents. "I'm sorry about last night. You know how I get when I drink? It won't happen again." Another text from him read, "Whatever you this needs to be fixed. Call it a new automobile, a new apartment, or anything else you like." As these messages were read aloud, an intriguing event occurred in the gallery. A number of people who had arrived with Diddy that morning, members of his entourage who had been sitting behind him in support, quietly got up and left. A third series of messages appeared to be attempts to keep incidents quiet through financial offers. "My lawyer can do anything from the past 5 years." Day 2 concluded with a man who entered the courtroom as music's untouchable king leaving, looking defeated. The security team surrounding him was unable to shield him from what had happened in that courtroom. And by the time this portion of testimony ended, Diddy was sitting at his table almost alone with his legal team. The show of support he had entered with that morning had vanished, and the evidence no one saw coming had totally changed everything. The question is not whether Diddy can win this case anymore. Rather, it is whether his reputation can ever recover from what the world heard in that courtroom. Cassie Ventura not only told her story today, but she may have changed Diddy's legacy. The evidence, testimony, and recordings all painted a picture that no one can ever forget.